Hey guys, I whipped together this endocrine diseases and disorders. There's probably way more than what I've included in here, but we don't have all the time in the world. But I did include 2 pituitary disorders, 2 pancreatic disorders, 2 thyroid disorders, and 2 adrenal disorders. I did not include any hypo or hypergonadism, where you have too much or too little testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone. So these are just some of the run-of-the-mill endocrine disorders. Let's do it. Here's probably one that you have seen the most. Diabetes, type 1. People that had type 1 diabetes did nothing to precipitate this. They were born with it. It is a type of disease caused an autoimmune disorder. You've learned this term in English class, I'm sure. What is an autobiography about? Yourself. Auto means self. An autoimmune disorder is where your own immune system is confused and it attacks a certain tissue in your body. When we did the integumentary system, I taught you vitiligo. Vitiligo is an autoimmune disorder where your white blood cells attack your melanocytes, the cells that give you skin color. Multiple sclerosis is a neurological disorder where your white blood cells are attacking the myelin sheath on your axons, in your neurons. There's dozens and dozens of autoimmune disorders. Type 1 diabetes is one of them. Your white blood cells are confused and they think that the beta cells of your pancreas are the bad guy. Obviously, they're not. You need your beta cells. What hormone comes from your beta cells in your pancreas? Remember? Insulin does. Glucagon comes from the alphas. Insulin comes from the betas. And when your white blood cells are attacking your beta cells, insulin can't be secreted. And so what would happen to your blood sugar levels if insulin is not available? High, low, somewhere between. Ask yourself, what does insulin do? And then ask yourself, what happens if I don't have insulin? Noah? It would be too high and it would stay that way. You had no insulin. You can't make it. So the pancreas produces little or no insulin when you have type 1 diabetes. You all should know by now that insulin is necessary to actually lower your blood sugar levels. If you just had lunch like me, your blood sugar levels are probably pretty high. So how would you expect insulin to respond to those high levels of sugar in your blood? Scout? So you're saying that my high sugar levels are going to cause low levels of insulin? That's what you just said. Think it out. Think it out. My blood sugar levels are elevated. What will that do to your insulin levels in your blood? Test on Tuesday. Can't just be sitting here in silence. Go ahead, Sam. Your insulin levels would rise. So imagine my left hand, my left, your right. This is my sugar levels. Sugar levels rising. Insulin is going to rise as a response. As insulin levels get higher, what will happen to your blood sugar levels? They will drop. And as your blood sugar levels drop, what will that do to your insulin levels? They will follow. So sugar goes first, insulin follows. Then sugar goes down, insulin follows. You don't need insulin anymore if your blood sugar levels are low. There is no cure for type 1 diabetes, but there is treatment and there is management of the disorder. You want to maintain your sugar levels. You have to maintain a proper diet, possible lifestyle changes to prevent complications, which there are multiple complications. All right. So take a look at these 2 cells. This is kind of like a before and after. This is a cell in your body. Now, all of you should have taken biology. You would not be allowed in this class if you hadn't. What process takes place in your cells that requires sugar to make ATP? Sloan? You know? What? Oh, come on. Yes, you do. What did you learn in freshman year bio that uses glucose to make adenosine triphosphate, ATP. It's the opposite of photosynthesis. ADP is when you only have 2 phosphates. I'm asking you, what is the process that uses sugar as a fuel source to produce ATP? And you just told me you didn't know. It is cellular respiration. Cell respiration uses sugar and oxygen to produce ATP. So take a look at this diagram. This yellow molecule is insulin. The blue receptor matches with insulin. That is an insulin receptor. When the receptor and insulin come together, this little green channel opens up and the glucose comes in. So, scenario, what if you don't have that yellow molecule, that yellow insulin? Can glucose be allowed into your cells? It cannot. And if glucose cannot enter your cells, where are you going to end up finding a whole bunch of glucose? If it cannot enter your cells, where's the sugar going to go? Your bloodstream. And it's going to stay there. And you're going to end up being hyperglycemic, high blood sugar. That is not the best thing to have. And I'll get to that momentarily. So for all of you that just had lunch, your blood sugar is probably higher than normal. Insulin's going to bring it back down. That's normal. Now, here's some complications. What part of your body do you think is the hardest parts to get blood to? Your feet, your hands, your fingers, your toes. Especially your lower legs, because not only does blood have to get all the way down to the very tips of your toes, it's going to come all the way back up and defy gravity. That's not easy. Well, I've always kind of described having too much sugar in your blood like having glass in your bloodstream. And that is where, what I mean by that is glass can shred, it can cut, and it can do a lot of damage. That's what too much sugar will do. It can really scar up your blood vessels and it can actually damage your nerves. And what you're looking at here is the person who had so much nerve damage and so much circulatory system damage in their lower leg that it had to be amputated. Because what happens to a part of your body that does not get proper blood flow? Necrosis. What is necrosis, Chris? The death of cells. It dies. And it doesn't get brought, it does not get brought back to life. So necrosis can spread. So you have to cut that part of your body off before more parts of your body experience necrosis. You can damage your kidneys, you can damage your eyes, you can damage your heart, you can damage your blood vessels, your nerves, if you have levels that are too high or too low. Now, there's this diet, I'm sure that you guys watch on TV. You've seen Jersey Shore, Snooki, JWoww, Vinny, Pauly, all those people. I know you've at least heard of it. And you know that one guy, what's the skinhead? What's his name? The guy on Jersey Shore that's always living with his mom. Vinny. What's that diet that he's on where he eats nothing but fat? Keto. There's a process called ketoacidosis where you actually eat fat and you avoid carbs at all costs, and your body will metabolize fat faster and you actually lose weight. So in that show, like, you know, they're Italian, they love to eat pizza and everything. He would peel the cheese off the pizza and not eat the bottom of it or the crust because that's carbohydrates. You know, bread is carbs. Well, in ketoacidosis, when it comes to diabetes, it can actually be a complication where you have very high levels of sugar and you have no insulin and you're producing acid. If you remember from freshman year, and those of you who've taken my class for AP Bio, if you can't do cell respiration, you know, glycolysis, prep reaction, Krebs cycle, electron transport chain, what is the alternative? Fermentation of acid. You make a lot of lactic acid. And that lactic acid can really build up in your bloodstream. And that can cause acidosis, way too much blood, or sorry, way too much acid in your blood. And that's just made from a lack of using sugar. Your cells can't get the sugar because they don't have insulin. So when diabetics have a meal, their own glands cannot produce the insulin. They have to take insulin supplements, whether it be an insulin shot or an insulin injection of some sort. And that should do the trick. And they have to maintain their blood sugar levels and their insulin levels. It's a way of life. Now, type 2 diabetes. This is a little different. Type 2 diabetes is also known as adult onset diabetes. And there are no country has more type 2 diabetics than it's always Mexico and America, 1 and 2 that rank with the most type 2 diabetics. This is developed later in life. You generally aren't born with it. Now, it's not 100% known why this happens, but it's very much surrounded by your diet and your activity level. Your body, your glands, your pancreas produces insulin that is not recognized by your cells. The way that it was taught to me when I was in high school, maybe this is wrong. I don't think it's wrong because I've done my own education and everything, but think of it like this. You have a lifespan worth of insulin. From when you're born to when you die, you have a lifelong span of insulin to last you your whole life. Let's say that you eat enough sugar to power a small army. You eat donuts every day. You eat sugary cereal every day. You have cakes and brownies all the time. You live, breathe, and die off of soda, which is a ton of sugar. And you don't exercise. You're gaining a lot of weight from all this. Your pancreas basically says, I give up. I can't keep up with this. And so it really produces insulin that is not recognized by your cells. It's like a substandard poor man's version of insulin. Your cells go, the heck is this? This isn't insulin. And so the sugar can't get in your cells. So prevention of type 2 diabetes is eating healthy, getting active, not going too long for inactive periods, and losing weight. When I was a senior in high school, my high school football coach was a big guy. He had a big gut, big man. And he had to retire because he had diabetes. He had type 2. And here are your choices. You have 2 choices, really. You either can continue to eat poorly and not exercise, and your lifespan will be shortened, or you can change your diet habits, get more active, lose that weight, and live longer. And you can get rid of type 2 diabetes, but you have to go through some major changes because whatever behavior's gotten you there, you have to undo it. And so I remember when I was visiting from college one day, like 2 years after I graduated, I saw my high school coach, and I almost didn't recognize him. He lost a lot of weight. It was either that or a premature death, pretty much. So too much sugar, I'm talking way too much sugar, and lack of activity really leads to type 2 diabetes, which can develop later in life. And I think, I might be wrong, but I think in this country, it's us in Mexico, there's more children with type 2 diabetes than any other country because you got McDonald's, you got fast food, you got sugar everywhere. You look at the sugar content in cereals, it's insane. It's a lot. And, you know, sugar is as addictive as any other drug out there. It's very addictive. So if you look at the top line, that's normal. That little pink tube is your small intestine. Your pancreas is right next to the beginning of your small intestine. It's called your duodenum. You'll learn that later in the school year. But whenever you have sugar in your blood, your pancreas is alerted. It secretes insulin. Sugar goes in your cells. Problem solved. Type 1 diabetes, you're not making any insulin at all because your pancreas is under attack. So sugar cannot go into your cells. You have to take actual insulin supplements. And then type 2 diabetes, your pancreas is making like a poor substitute for insulin that your cells don't recognize and therefore don't acknowledge. And sugar cannot enter your cells. All right. Any questions on diabetes? Okay. Next is going to be a couple diseases with your adrenal glands. This first one is very rare. I was doing research on it. It's not that common. So you guys probably have never seen it or heard anyone that's had it. This is adrenal insufficiency. You have hyposecretion of your adrenal glands. It's when your adrenals produce an insufficient amount of cortisol and aldosterone. I never taught you aldosterone. It's very simple. It regulates your sodium levels in your blood. When these two hormones are in low levels, you tend to start to develop Addison's disease. Here are the various symptoms. I'm not expecting you to know all those symptoms. That's unnecessary. But you can read them for yourself. You got fatigue, weight loss, appetite, darkening of your skin. That's the only real image I could find for Addison's disease. You see the hand on the left, the hand on the right. That's the same hand. Maybe it is, maybe it doesn't. But there's one hand that's darker than the other. You got salt craving, low blood sugar, nausea, diarrhea, and vomiting, abdominal pain, muscle and joint pain, irritability, depression, body hair loss, or sexual dysfunction in women. This is just due to your adrenal glands not producing as much hormone as they should, particularly aldosterone and cortisol. Pop quiz question for you. What hormone stimulates your adrenal glands to produce cortisol? Adrenocorticotropic hormone. Okay. Here's Cushing's syndrome. I would venture to say that you have definitely seen this out in society when you're just out doing your thing, going out to Bayshore, going to Publix, whatever. I think I've had a few students that have had this. And I want to just remind you all that with most of these conditions, I mean, no one has done anything to merit these. It's just things that you're born with. This is where you make too much cortisol. So this is hyper secretion of your adrenal glands. You have too much cortisol in your body, either because your body is making too much of it, or let's say that you are on some sort of prescription to take a cortisol supplement every day. People tend to overdose, and so you're getting too much cortisol. The hallmark of Cushing's syndrome is just this big fatty mass that's on your trap muscles, your trapezius, between your shoulder blades, and they actually call that buffalo hump. You have a rounded face that's called moon face, red cheeks, thick stretch marks on your abdomen, and they're purple or pink, very thin limbs, and you're bruised very easily. Like if a mosquito bites you, you're going to be all a bunch of colors. So those are classic signs of Cushing's syndrome. This is just from excessive cortisol, which is secreted from your adrenal cortex. So whatever is resulting in you having all that cortisol, it can be treated hormonally, but you have to get that treatment. You can read some of the signs yourself. All right, next, Graves' disease. This is an autoimmune disorder that affects the thyroid now. I want to have you guys remember that an autoimmune disorder is when your immune system attacks a specific type of tissue in your body. Type 1 diabetes, it attacks the beta cells of your pancreas. Graves' disease, it attacks your thyroid. The antibodies behave like thyroid stimulating hormone, and it causes your thyroid to secrete too much thyroxine. And so, do any of you recall, and I certainly hope you do, what is the main responsibility of your thyroid? What is its ultimate purpose for your body? Your metabolism. If you had hyperthyroidism, you have a very fast metabolism. I would used to say that if you had hyperthyroidism and you ate a wedding cake, you could eat the whole thing by yourself and you would still lose weight. Your metabolism is very quick. So you're burning through energy. You've got a lot of energy. There is such thing as too much. Remember, homeostasis. You want to stay in balance. There is such thing as too much. There is such thing as too little. You want to be perfectly balanced. Graves' disease could just be a genetic disorder. Again, it's caused by an autoimmune system. And the good news is that you can easily treat it. You just have to have the proper hormone balance. I think my mom is starting to develop some sort of thyroid issue, but if she's on the proper medication, you can regulate it. So it can be treated. A lot of stuff cannot be cured. but it can be treated. And I believe I have shown you guys what a goiter is. It's where your thyroid gets really swollen. Have I shown you that? No? All right, I'll show you at the end of class if I remember. A goiter is where your thyroid gets really swollen and it looks like a giant softball in your throat because your thyroid is not functioning appropriately. Another sign is your eyes bulge out. It's called exophthalmos. Your eyes are really bulging out. That could be a sign of Graves' disease. Why they do that, I am not entirely clear. I have to research that. But you can see the image I found. They really stick out there, don't they? All right. Last one for the thyroid is Hashimoto's thyroiditis. This is hyposecretion of your thyroid. So would you expect a person with Hashimoto's thyroiditis to be, if I tell you they have an underactive thyroid, do they have a slow metabolism or a fast metabolism? Slow. Now, I have a student who said he has a slow metabolism because he has an underactive thyroid. How would you describe the energy level of somebody with hypothyroidism? Yeah, they don't have a lot of energy. You say he's always tired. It's because you slowly metabolize your food to make energy. And you're not necessarily meeting your energy needs. This is where you do not produce enough thyroid hormone. You can read some of the symptoms I have there. Tiredness, weight gain, feeling cold, joint stiffness, constipation, depression, puffy eyes, dry skin, thinning hair, hair loss, heavy or irregular periods in women. This can be treated with synthetic thyroid hormones. And I don't know what kind of thyroid condition my mom is starting to develop, but her doctor said, we're going to get you on some sort of thyroid therapy. You'll be fine. So long as you manage it. If you totally ignore it, then things can get bad. But it's 2022. We have a lot of medicine. We have a lot of technology to help people with these diseases. But the big one is that included their body is just gassed. They don't have enough energy to do things that you guys may take for granted. Walking from one period to another, that can be exhausting. All right, now we're going to get into the pituitary disorders. The first one is acromegaly. This is where you produce too much growth hormone, likely due to a pituitary tumor. Now, if you're really big and tall, that's not necessarily mean you have acromegaly. You're going to see some pictures I have of people with acromegaly, and they're all wrestlers. You have too much GH. It makes your bones really big. It makes your muscles really big. It's after you are fully grown as an adult. Next page, I'm going to show you gigantism. The difference between gigantism and acromegaly is gigantism begins when you're a child. Acromegaly has already taken effect when you're an adult. It causes usually really big jaws, which causes your teeth to have gaps between them. Your jaw literally gets bigger. The bones get bigger, but your teeth don't get bigger. And so you start to have gaps between your teeth because they're spreading out in that big jaw. You have a protruding brow, the brow bone. You have huge hands, very sweaty, deep, husky voice, just big guys, really big guys. And women get this too. Here's the bottom three. We're all former wrestlers. They all had acromegaly. They had pituitary tumors. This guy in the middle, the bald guy, this was the big show. Wrestled for a long time. And I don't know if he's still wrestling. He might be. I can't think of another profession he could do. But one of his big moves was he would hold down his opponent. He'd raise his hand to, the crowd would go all fired up. You just slap the guy's hand. It'll just knock the wind out of your chest because his hands were huge. This guy on the left, he was in the movie The Longest Yard. You ever see that movie with Adam Sandler? The prison guards versus the convicts. He was the guy playing the ping pong. He was very big and scary. Look at his big jaw. And I remember seeing him like on TV. He would always scream when he was a wrestler for a little while. He had a bunch of gaps between his teeth because his jaw got so big, but his teeth did not grow. And so he had a lot of gaps between them. Here's gigantism. It's almost the same as acromegaly. The only difference is it starts when you're a child. That is the tallest human that has ever been recorded. I think it's somewhere between 8 and 9 feet tall. Yeah, imagine him on your basketball team, Noah. He doesn't need to leave the ground to dunk. This is also caused by pituitary tumors. When we're done with this, I'll look up exactly how tall he was, so we'll have an idea. But I am going to go out on a limb. I'm just guessing. Disclaimer. I'm going to say the guy he's standing next to is probably like 6 feet. I'm just guessing. But we'll look it up when we're done here and see exactly how tall he was. Okay. Last one is pituitary dwarfism. This is hyposecretion of growth hormone. And it's typically genetic in nature. And there's really 2 types of dwarfs. One is where their bodies are in proportion, and one is when their bodies are not. The condition in which their bodies are not, where they have stubby legs, they tend to have like protruding large foreheads. Have you ever seen The Wizard of Oz? The Oompa Loompas, they had this condition. It's called achondroplasia. Has anyone ever watched the TV show Jackass? On MTV for a little while? You know, Wee Man, the little guy, he has achondroplasia. There's a reality show of a husband and wife with 5 children. They're all dwarfs. They all have achondroplasia. They are not in proportion. And then you have actual pituitary dwarfs where they are in full proportion. You guys, your bodies are in proportion. Your arms, your legs, your head, your neck, everything's in the right scale. They're just very small. Very small. You can see the picture I found on the bottom. You can see that arms, legs, everything's in proportion. They're just super tiny because they have a deficiency of growth hormone. All right, so that's it. While I still have this this lesson being recorded, let's look at 2 things I'd like to include on this lesson. So I'm going to go to the internet here, and let's look up a goiter first, shall we? A goiter is where you have an underactive or hyperactive thyroid. So here we go. There we are. So you can see that some of them can get pretty bad. Do you remember what element on the periodic table is actually fuel to help your thyroid sustain itself regularly? Iodine. Very good. So you can see all that. Goiters and more goiters. And now let's type in last one. Tallest man ever recorded. What was his name? There he is. Robert Wadlow. Let's look him up. Let's see what his height was. Let's go to Real Deal. 8'11", 1 inch shy of 9 feet. Darn. That's still pretty tall. Good grief. He just needs to stretch a little bit. Check out how tall he was when he was 13. Woo! 7'4", 13 years old. That's taller than Shaq. That's taller than all those wrestlers I just showed you. All right. How long did he live? Let's look that up. 22 years old, 1918 to 1940. Didn't live very long, did he? All right, that's it. Don't forget your mastering.